We're
All
live.
right, here we are. Here we are, guys. Welcome to the Reptile Hangouts podcast. You got your host here, Charles, your host over there. I'm still figuring it out. Nick with Gecko Galaxy, and down Chondo, we got our brother Gabriel with DIY Reptile Keeper. How y'all doing tonight?
Oh, we're doing great, bro. How about you?
Good, man. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Awesome, man. Just getting home from this Christmas party, ready for some casting of the pod variety. I'm very excited. Let's hear a
Casting
little
the
bit
pod
about
variety.
not USARK. This is supposed to be my USARK shirt. I forgot I'm not wearing it. Anyway,
Oh, I'm not
continue.
wearing one tonight either. I'm rocking my
I
own
saw it
swag
in the
tonight.
in
Yeah.
I saw it in the dresser and I was like, yeah, that's USARK. No, it's an ARBC. But anyway, continue.
It's
Tell
reptile
us about
related.
USARK.
All right. So USARK, we talk about it every single week, and we're going to talk about it every week for the rest of eternity because it's important. So USARK.org. If you're not a member, please consider going over and checking them out and becoming a member. It's pretty inexpensive for those of you who like to drink your Starbies or drink your Dunkin' coffee. Doesn't cost more than that to become a member, and you definitely should. They're the only ones fighting for our rights to be able to keep these reptiles nationwide, fighting against legislation that's being put into place to say that we can't have this stuff unreasonably in a lot of cases. So definitely support USARK.
Awesome, awesome. So here we are again. Is this? Don't give me. Don't. I'm thinking week 8.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
week 8. Here we are, man. They're starting to blend together, guys, with the holidays, and we're getting so close to all the major holiday of the year, and everything's kind of blending together a little bit. But here we are for week 8 at the Reptile Hangouts podcast, and you want to be a reptile breeder. Do you? Do you think you do? You might want to. Maybe it's a cool idea. Well, that's what we're talking about today. Why you should and why you should not be a reptile breeder. There's nothing wrong with being a keeper, people. I'm a people keeper. I mean, keeper people. I don't keep people.
People keeper.
Good
Wait a
night.
minit.
Good night. Here we are. Here we
You
are.
keep
We're having
people?
fun.
I've been in your house. You do a
I'm
pretty
a
good job of
keeper
hiding it.
of non-humanoid things. Anyway, after that, somebody talk. Yeah.
All right. So, as my brother so eloquently put it, we are in week 8, and we're talking about
It was good till I started talking about
being
keeping
a-
people.
being a reptile keeper, and being a reptile breeder specifically. So, we're always looking for things to talk about that are relevant to what's going on in the reptile community, and I think this is just as relevant as anything.
Yeah.
We've talked about social media in some of our past episodes. Probably it's come up almost in every episode, and this sort of mentality of everybody has to be a reptile breeder as opposed to just a reptile keeper. And I'm sure that, a given person that might watch this at some point is not necessarily thinking down those lines. But it seems like it's ever prevalent in our community that people go straight from, oh, that's cool lizard or that's cool snake to I have to now be a breeder. And the question is really why? Why are we doing this? Why are we
If
in this
I
mindset? Yeah, go ahead.
if I may add a little bit to that, especially with me, I don't know the best way to put this. Maybe expanding my interest, so to speak. Anybody who watches knows that I've recently become obsessed with chameleons, and it's hard to not get in that mentality of this is like because when you find a thing and you love it and that's your thing, whether it's crested geckos, ball pythons, tree boas, anything like that, you find it and you're like, man, this is the most beautiful thing ever. I want another one.
Absolutely.
And I want another one.
It's like a disease.
And I want another one. And the next thing you know, you're like, man, this female is gorgeous. I'm pick up this female. Well, what's the best way to get more of these beautiful creatures without having to, you know what I mean? It's a more of a, I think there's more of an evolution to it than just kind of being like, I'm going to breed these now. I think the drive to keep more of these animals often leads into breeding for the wrong reasons. I don't want to 100% say the wrong reasons, but somebody who wants to keep 10 chameleons gets a male and a female or whatever, anything, and they're like, oh, well, let me just breed them. Then I'll have 10 of them. And then next thing you know, you got 40 babies. It's like, what the hell am I doing? You know what I mean? So I think there's an evolution to it. And I feel it every day. Every day I come in this room that I podcast in, I see this animal and I'm like, I'm going to buy every one of you. Every single one of you I see, I'm gonna buy, and it's hard not to do that. As keepers and hobbyists, and you really got a passion for it. So it's something to be said about the evolution of it.
Yeah, and coming from someone who has a much longer history in this hobby, I have found a place of balance between the wow, that's really cool, I want it, I gotta have it, and I just spent the last 2.5, 3 hours really hustling right before this podcast to take care of the 40 some odd geckos that I have in the house right now.
I think the count's more than that, isn't it?
No, it's in the low 40s currently, which is a modest collection by most New Caledonian gecko keeper standards. It's pretty modest, but it's a lot of work, no doubt about it. So
I don't even have 40, and it's a lot of work.
Yeah, you got some other crazy things mixed into your collection too. So
this is going to sound a little prima donna-ish, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's a lot of work. So I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, and you got a lot going on in your life too, and that's another thing. So I think that we'll set out a couple of points before we really get into the meat of this. You mentioned that sometimes people do choose to breed or choose to jump into breeding possibly for the wrong reasons. And then you also mentioned the other thing, which is, in my opinion, definitely not a wrong reason. It's a great reason to try the breeding endeavor. It is if you just want to have more and you want to make them yourself and you want to do the very best you can to, produce healthy animals that will, ultimately be your pets. And then on the other side of the coin, you have the wrong reason. You have everybody I see on YouTube or everybody I see, on other social media platforms or whatever is a breeder, and they go to shows and they keep going to shows, so they must be making money, or they sell on morph market, so they must be making money, and it's sort of driven by that that business side factor. And it's not necessarily a wrong choice to try to go into this business. It's just that sometimes, and overwhelmingly large number of times, people are going into the breeding business mindset extremely fast, and they're not necessarily considering everything. And Gabe, you can speak to I think what's a good first thing that we can talk about, because you said something to me about this the other day when we discussed this, about a newer keeper jumping into breeding before they really have much experience at all.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, I have a friend. I'll just say it like that. A friend, and he just recently got into reptiles, and he calls me. Well, let's say ball python. So he just recently purchased a ball python, and it's his first ball python, and he calls me like a week later, and he's like, "Hey man, can you help me find like a male clown ball python?" I'm like, well, why do you need a clown ball python?
And very specific.
Well, yeah, I was like, why do you need another clown ball python? You just got, your first one. And he's like, well, I want to breed them. And my first thing was, I was like, okay, well, let me ask you a couple questions, So I asked him, I was like, how, what temperature do you, normally keep a ball python? Just like the simple basic stuff. And he really couldn't tell me, just like simple basic stuff that most people should know. And at that point I was like, well, I think you should focus on keeping before, and actually get to know your species before, you go into trying to breed them. And at the end of the day, another thing is that there's so many other species that, you could be working with and, and stuff. And I just think that if you just got your first ball python or your first bearded dragon or something like that, just because that's the animal that you first got doesn't mean that that's the animal that you're going to continue to work with and love. So I think that
I feel like what you're saying is like a good basis is husbandry, and
Yeah, I mean, you
get
gotta
there with your husbandry. Get to the point where it's almost second nature. That's you got it.
exactly.
You got it to the point where 10 of these things would be no problem. You got
Yep.
it. You know what to do. You know
Yep.
what it is. Hey Dom, how you
Hey
doing, man?
Dom, thanks for
Good
coming.
friend
in.
of ours, Dom. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate the support, brother.
Yeah, man.
But
It's-
but
yeah.
husbandry is a key
I
factor.
can't really say
'cause-
much because as when I first started, that's how it was. Like you got I think everybody got into it, wanted to breed ball pythons, at least in our era.
Yeah.
Like everybody at least wanted to breed ball pythons one time.
Yeah.
I had never had a ball python in my life, and I was introduced to Snake Bites TV, and I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna buy."
That looks cool. Yeah,
I'm gonna
Yeah.
breed a bunch of ball
This
pythons.
is some of the craziest
so
things I've ever seen in my life.
so it's worth saying that even though some of our tones tonight are going to sound like, hey, shame, don't make these decisions or whatever, don't make these flip decisions. It doesn't mean that we haven't been down that road before in our own
Absolutely.
minds. And that's the reason that we feel like we can come to you with at least a perspective on it, because we've learned the hard way in some cases. I certainly have. My evolution as a herpetoculturist, a keeper, began as a pure keeper. And I wanted a lot. I wanted like one of everything I could get my hands on. When I was in high school, it started with a corn snake, and that I had, and then it turned into
Then it was
now I
100
can,
degrees in this quadrant of the house at all times.
yeah, and then I can get, my dad calls me up and says, "Oh, I got somebody who wants to give you a California king." Okay, turned out to be a gray banded king, which if it's just amazing. So I had that. Then a Eurymastix and a bearded dragon and a Savannah monitor and a
Water dragon.
Chinese water dragon, which is actually the first,
Cujo.
not a corn snake. The corn snake was one of my first, but yeah, the water dragon was my first. I don't know why I slipped that. My mom ran over a couple of little box turtles with her lawnmower, but didn't actually hit them with the lawnmower. She just basically revealed them with the lawnmower. Those lived with me for a while, which was probably a bad choice to keep a couple of eastern box turtles that were wild, but they did fine for me. I had a.
Hey, do you remember when we found that baby snapper?
Yes, in the backyard.
I had that baby, in
Under
our
the
little
pool.
pool drainage.
Yeah, under the pool.
Under the deck, under the upper deck.
It's so weird.
That was insane.
I still think that one got there by way of bird, because there's just no other way for it to have gotten there.
I know we're not. I mean, we were close, but not close enough. For a baby. I mean, and when I say baby, think of this as AirPods. These are AirPod.
Oh, yeah.
This is an AirPod Pro case, and that's
tiny.
how big the turtle was. That's how big it was. It was insane. We kept him for a while, man. A little gorgeous little snapper.
Yeah, I had an eastern mud turtle for a while. I went through a phase where I did some like short-term keeping of wild captives, which was, in retrospect, not the best choice. I had a black rat. I had a Nerodia that I had found while I was herping that had a big gash in its back, and I took it home and I put like Neosporin on it, which is not really the best thing for it, but it did heal. And I fed it frogs that I went out and kept, and then I let it go. I did all kinds of crazy stuff when I was just keeping, but in that era of my keeping, I never really thought about, I want to breed these things. And I don't really know why. I don't know if it's just because it was just before, YouTube and everything really blew up. And I really wasn't seeing a whole lot of like these big industrial reptile
I know why,
breeders
bro.
on YouTube.
I know why.
I was basically.
You were trying to get that up. You're trying to get that N size up.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, man.
Before I even knew what N was.
I don't remember breeding being a thing for the longest time, man. Like, I
mean, it's always been a thing for a lot of people. It's just that social media was not as big, and we weren't exposed to it.
Yeah.
Unless you were already in that circle, you were not in the circle.
Yeah, because growing up, even with you guys both working at Pet World, before I started there at like fucking 12 or whenever I started working in the grooming area, I just assumed that people in other countries, over there, where these things come from, because they're not here. It's pretty.
A lot of the stuff that we like to keep, it's not
a lot of the things that you see in your pet stores and stuff, they're not like here. They're over there. So I just assumed that people just rounded them all up and shipped them here. I never put much thought into. Now obviously that's a big part of the pet trade. That's a big part of the pet trade, and I get that. But there's also breeders, and I just never even thought about the fact that somebody could be breeding these animals. I just thought every single animal in every pet store just came from over there. That's just how it works. I was never required to think further about it. Really,
and a lot of them did, and a lot of them still do. I knew
That's
about
another topic, but yes.
I knew about like Bill and Kathy Love. I knew about the corn snake queen. And the fact that she was making, all these cool corn snakes somewhere. But I just knew about her because I could find her website, but I couldn't. There wasn't like she didn't have a YouTube channel where she was like, if you put this snake with this snake, then you get to make this really cool snake, and talking about all the intricacies of how to do the breeding,
genetics.
And this is the thing. Is that was just never something that entered my mind at that stage. And then after my first bout of college and coming back home, I decided all of a sudden, because I think it was just from being exposed to more of these big breeders through social media. Yeah, I'm going to breed reptiles now. I'm going to go back into keeping reptiles because I always want to keep reptiles. That's always in me. Like I have to have them around or I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And so, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to breed, and I'm going to start with bearded dragons. Yeah. Looking back now, it wasn't the right choice. Oh, hello. There's one of
there she goes.
There's one of his non-reptilian tetrapods.
Now I was gonna make a point just shortly before the cat decided she could open a door. Don't know how they figured that out, by the way. I've never personally taught my cat how to open a door, but she figured it out.
It's those raptor genes buried deep down.
But and I'll say, and I'm not highly educated as far as the term is concerned. I'm not highly educated, collegiately or anything like that. But when you go to these reptile shows now, I don't know what it was back then, even if they really did them like that. But when you go now, there's no names. There's no ball python, corn snake, crested gecko. Like that doesn't exist no more. It's genetics. It's het, pine, triple, queer, tri, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's like X, 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 this male. And I'm like, what? I don't even know half of these things. Is this still a ball python?
It is, yeah. I don't.
I'm like super inchy killer spider G het super stripe lavender. What is this? Like I don't even know. It's insane to think like how much genetics goes into breeding these animals. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So
it's a whole thing. Oh yeah, question.
Dom has a question here. He says, so now that breeding has become bigger now, question for me specifically, I guess, with your breeding, do you think about breeding other species other than your geckos? Yeah. I think about it all the time.
Good question.
But it is a good question. I started out breeding other things besides crested geckos, Dom. I started out with breeding. I started with bearded dragons. I moved into corn snakes. I did some leopard geckos, western hognoses, and I had an Everglades rat pair, which they're basically like corn snakes when it comes to keeping and breeding. It's essentially the same thing, different species, obviously. And crested geckos is something that me and Gabe sort of tried to jump into together a little bit back in the early 2010s. And
oh man, I wish we'd have stuck with it.
Yeah, and if we'd have stuck with it, and really hung with it, we would be in a really cool position right now because some crazy things have happened since then. But yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking about trying to expand into other things, but this is a big sort of topic of what we're talking about tonight, Dom, is that you have to know your limits too. So not only should you be someone who, if these animals are something you want to get into, you need to educate yourself to the highest possible degree that you can. Really do your research, and we've talked about this before, and it goes back to increasing your sample size. You can find anything on the internet nowadays, and for a long time now it's been that way. You can search up how to care for whatever animal it is you want to find, but don't just read that first thing and be like, okay, I got a good handle on it now. Don't just go to the pet store. And I don't want to talk crap about pet stores. I worked at one for a long time. There's always at least a handful of people there that really know a good bit about something,
Oh yeah.
but you never know who you're going to be talking to, and you never know what they were taught, So, if you want to go and talk to people at pet stores, do that. Make that part of your research. That's fine. Try to find a consensus. Look for consistencies in all these different
Yeah.
sources.
Overlapping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you've seen. Talk to people. I got news for you. With this podcast, we've reached out to some people we probably thought we would never actually speak to or see in person, and they've come. Uh, that's interesting. They've come, out of the woodwork and talked to us, and it's been nice. So, yeah, reach out to people and ask questions, and also do just look for papers, look for care sheets, multiple different sources. Definitely do your research and delve into keeping your animals before you decide if breeding them is what you want to do. And back to the resources thing, I think that's probably the most important thing to consider when you decide that you want to start breeding reptiles, whether you decide you want to do it as a side business or a full time business, work into that, or you just want to make more of the animals that you love. Know what your resources are. I am at the extreme limit of my current resources right now with my collection in this apartment that I currently live in. We are on the search for a house, hopefully very soon. So that will be something that will be very good for my, side business of Gecko Galaxy and breeding these geckos and possibly other things in the future. I can't grow anymore, not currently. Hopefully soon I'll be able to. And I won't grow outside of what I can handle until I'm sure that I can handle it. So that's definitely one of the biggest things that you need to consider when it comes to, you know, do you want to breed reptiles? Do you really want to do it? Do you really want to breed them?
Yeah, I mean the amount of work and time that it takes. I mean, if depending on, I guess you got to think about the scale that you do it in too.
Yeah,
it can be a ton of work, man.
yeah.
I mean, like,
Let's.
when you bred bearded dragons, how much fun was that for you, bud? I'm
At
sure.
first, it was. And it was fun. I love beardies. I don't know anyone in the reptile community who's just like beardies. Forget
Oh, no,
beardies.
they're so cool,
They're,
man.
they're cool. They're personable lizards. They get decently sized. They're big, chunky lizards, and but the breeding, they're almost too easy. And a lot of these reptile species that we like to work with are quite easy to work with when it comes to breeding, which is probably not the best thing. But a male and a
Sorry,
female
I'm
bearded dragon.
realizing my glass is cracked
Be
completely in
careful.
half.
Don't cut
Yeah,
yourself.
I just saw the light hit it.
There you go.
But yeah,
Whew.
you put a male and a female bearded dragon together, they lock up one time, and you're looking at possibly 9 clutches. And an average clutch, a good first clutch from a good healthy female with good calcium levels and good nutrition, she's probably going to lay over 20, maybe even over 30 eggs that first time around. And then it's going to maybe go down by 5 or 10. And then in the third clutch, it might go down by another 5 or 10. And then on the fourth clutch, it might go down by, but you're looking at lots of clutches. And if you incubate them right,
That's a lot
you're gonna have a really good success rate when it comes to hatching them. I had a over 99% hatch rate success, with my bearded dragons, just doing regular old vermiculite and Hovabator incubator, which is what I still use. And those things are solid; they work. And then you got to figure out, where are you going to keep all these babies and how much are they going to eat and how long do you have to keep them before you can try to move some of them out? And that's another main thing that we really need to stress here is if you decide to breed any number of reptiles, whether you just breed one pair or you breed multiple pairs, you have to be prepared to keep every single offspring that thrives and survives in your collection indefinitely because you don't know whether you're going to be able to move them.
Yeah, man. There's
I got news for you. The market is volatile. It changes all the time. You don't know whether you're going to be able to move them.
Yeah, and then we talked about this in our last episode too with Mr. Bill Strand. We spoke on a couple, one breeder in particular, Ipart Alice. Some of these reptiles, they don't get along. You can't keep them together, especially not after a certain age. So then you got to think about that.
That's a
You
big
can't
thing
keep
with
your animals that are gonna literally fight to the death in some cases maybe not, whatever, there you can't do that. So now all these animals you have to think about, okay, well, now they're maturing and they're reaching, their maturity. How am I going to keep them separate? Because if you don't keep them separate, big problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, bearded dragons, that was a
So you
big
got to be
thing.
prepared for that.
I did not keep every single bearded dragon separate, and I started out keeping numbers 5, 6 together. Then I realized that was too many. Then I tried to keep them in groups no bigger than 3. That was about the limit that I could handle with the resources that I had. With the racks that I built. You remember those racks that
Oh,
had
yeah.
the tubs with the ultraviolet lights in there and the heat lights in there.
Yep.
And I couldn't keep them in groups smaller than that. And
Oh, no,
even
they can
with
get
those
crap out
small
of you.
groups, I would lose some toes sometimes. I would lose some tail tips, because they are voracious feeders. They also are, they build, sort of hierarchies amongst themselves when you
Of
keep them in
course.
those little
Yeah.
groups, and
There's
some are bigger
competition
and
for
more
food.
dominant. Yeah,
So
it's what
even
we
if
call.
there's no physical damage, I mean, you're talking about maybe one of them's going to not eat.
Yeah, dude.
Because he can't. He physically can't. They take it away. The food competition is a big thing. It's a very big thing.
Yeah, what we
That's
would
why
call.
when you go into the wild, you don't see 17 bearded dragons sitting on top of each other.
Yeah, that's what we
because
would
that's
call.
not the way it works.
That's what we would call interspecific competition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
So here we go.
intraspecific. Yeah.
Charles,
Dom has a
Yes,
question.
also, I mean, don't want to make it all sound like it's all bad, like
No, it's very
it's
rewarding, and if it's something that you really want to put your time into and it's your passion to do
absolutely.
this, then we're not discouraging you from trying it in any way, shape, or form. We're just trying to put the valuable sort of knowledge that we've gained over the years of trying different things to let you know that it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time, and there's a lot of things to consider.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is. There's a lot of things to consider, but
So Dom's got a question. He says, going off what Charles is talking about, how do Cressies react with one another? Can you keep more than one in enclosure, as opposed to like the chameleons where we usually keep them separate? There's 2 schools of thought on Cresties.
yeah,
Some people are all for cohabbing girls, year round, either 1 or 2 or maybe even 3, depending on the size of the enclosure. And then some people who do breed will keep their pairs together year round as well,
yeah.
without
I
too much
actually,
trouble.
we actually keep our pairs together all year round.
Right.
And but we give them large enclosures. I mean, for crested geckos. I mean,
yeah, for a couple of them, and they have options. They have you have bioactive enclosures, so you're creating microhabitats in there for them to sort of go to, in microclimates, for them to use in different ways. So is it the 100% a no? No, it's not 100% no. Do I recommend it personally? No, that's my opinion. All of my Cresties and Gargs and Chihuahuas stay separate. Even my babies. That's another thing. There are some people who will raise babies in groups of 2 or 3 when they do Cresties. I keep every single baby separate that I hatch. So I currently have about 20 of them right now that are all in their own little boxes. And all my adults stay in their own enclosures until it's time to pair them up for breeding, which I'll do for usually about a month or so at the beginning of the season. And then maybe another time about halfway through, if I start to see some fertility fall off, I'll try to get a little boost by putting a male back in with a female.
Yeah. So I keep.
That's a good question, though.
It is.
Together, but I only keep one pair together because you also, if you have like a trio or something that you keep together,
and that's just
it can get
that's just more attention. Yeah.
It can get complicated.
And there are breeders who do that. There are breeders who keep small groups of females together, and then they just switch males throughout the season. So then their biggest groups at any given time are usually like 4, 3 females and 1 male. Personally, with the size of my collection, I like the fact that I know exactly which males are going with which females, and I know which eggs are coming from which females, that type of thing.
Exactly.
So these people who are doing these groups they have a lot of experience. They know exactly the genetics and the lineage, sometimes going back generations on every single animal that they have in an enclosure.
So they can look at the babies and know what.
Well, that, and they know too that if they put this male with this group of females, that doesn't matter who lays the eggs, the babies are going to give you the same type of thing. So they don't necessarily have to be like, okay, these lay eggs came from this girl, and they might be able to figure that out sometimes based on just watching their animals, because not every female is going to lay at the exact same time. So if you
Yep.
keep a good eye on your animals and you see which female is in the lay box, you'll know roundabout where your eggs came from. So there's ways around that. But if you're not going to pay that close of attention and you're going to do groups like that, it could be a crapshoot depending on who's the
Gabe,
mom.
did you change your light schedule?
He changed it last week for
Oh, okay.
Bill.
I
So
did so I must have not changed it back, but yeah, I did. I changed.
Oh, there
Hey!
it is. I was about to say, because my misters are going off and your lights haven't turned off yet.
Yeah.
Oh man, good time. Hey, so
that was good timing, CJ.
yeah, it was.
Hold up.
Actually, I was gonna change gears a little bit, but this is a really good question. We have a term for that actually, and that's called holdbacks. You get a very, a specific animal you want to breed back into the line.
yeah, we call it
That's
line
a thing.
breeding. Yeah.
Well,
So,
yeah.
right. Holdbacks. We'll choose holdbacks from amongst the offspring that we produce. Based on what it is, what our end, not our end goal, but our continuing evolving goal for
Good
the
question.
look of the animal. It is a very good question, Dom. Thanks for all your thought provoking questions tonight. We really appreciate it. But yeah, so I don't know that I would necessarily breed personally offspring siblings back together, although you certainly can for a generation without too much inbreeding depression. But most likely, what I would do is I would bring an offspring back to a parent,
Yeah.
maybe just one time, just to see if I can enhance that look
And
that
then
they
you
both
could throw
have.
something else to
Yeah,
whatever
and we're
offspring
always
that goes, and then you could go back
right.
to something else, to a parent again, depending on what you want. It gets complicated.
It can get complicated, and we are always on the lookout for new bloodlines to come in, from other collections, so that we know that there's pretty little chance, of them they're having a serious direct relation, so that down the line we're not just continuing, that interbreed or that inbreeding
Yeah.
depression and seeing possible issues, arise from that.
Yeah, man, and you know what? That is something that hold on, guys. I gotta scoot closer to this computer.
You're good, bud.
Yeah.
But I forgot what I was saying.
Charles said something about switching gears. So if you want to do
Yeah,
that,
no. Yeah, so just a little, and of course, Gabe, if your thought comes back, please interject. But switching gears a little bit, and you'll notice there's going to be some overlapping points of conversation here. But moving a little bit away from the breeding aspect. Well, I don't want to completely switch gears because I feel like we were down talking breeding a little bit. Let's for a few minutes. Let's talk about the
we're riding the
pros
line.
of breeding.
Oh,
What can you get from it?
I mean,
What are the personal joys? And I mean, obviously,
I guess
there is the potential to have monetary benefits. So we're excluding that. What are the personal gains you can get from breeding? What do you like to see? The creations. What is it for you?
I don't know. I guess I don't know. Like I've kind of switched thought processes on that. I like breeding the cresties and stuff like that, and stuff, and gargoyles. Well, I haven't bred gargoyles yet, but I'm planning hopefully this year. But I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. I can't.
Well, let me interject and see if I can put you on track, because we talk a lot. So I know I think I have an idea of maybe where you're going with this, just to help you spark your thought process. You like breeding the cresties for a lot of the same reasons that most people are doing it for, but you have some interesting goals in mind, maybe long term, to work with some more obscure lizard species, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, exactly that is basically that's where I was going with it. I just lost my train of thought or whatever. But I guess we need to start trying to focus on breeding things that aren't established, and that's why. And there's nothing wrong with everybody breeding crested geckos or everybody breeding ball pythons, everybody breeding boas. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a market for that and everything. But like for me, like right now, I think the way I'm heading toward is more towards like other species of like agamids, you know, in like Asian water dragons, Chinese water dragons, mountain horn lizards, things like that. Because they're species that are coming in wild caught in huge numbers. And I mean, I mean, it's ridiculous in huge numbers, but you never see any captive raised stuff or captive stuff.
They're very few and far between, for sure.
So I mean I mean, you could say that's a good point for you. You want to sort of push the frontier, sort of push the boundary of what's being captive bred. So that's it's a good reason. It's a great reason.
I mean, and that's just the way that where I'm headed. You know, that's the future.
No, yeah, perfect.
Just because I just think we need a bigger variety, but and we have that variety, but we just need more captive raised animals. You know.
Absolutely.
More variety, yeah. What about you, Nick? What aside from possible monetary benefit, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is slowly evolving into a side business for me, for sure, and hopefully, it's something that will take a good chunk of my make a chunk of my income one day. That's obviously what I'd really like to do. There's really nothing in this world that makes me happier than taking care of all these animals and producing.
You thoroughly enjoy cleaning 100 shits from 50 cages, right?
Oh, dude, I do too.
Sometimes it's pretty cathartic, man. I mean, if you really get into the mode like I was earlier, and sometimes it's hard to really motivate yourself to get up and do it. Like when you got
tagged pretty good earlier too, didn't you?
It can be pretty mindless, honestly.
It can be mindless, but it can also be. It's good to get into that mindless state sometimes. To just go through. I had some music going in my headphones, which I don't always do. Sometimes I listen to other podcasts. Sometimes I don't listen to anything at all because I'm just weird like that. I know a lot of people in the world like they can't live without having some music playing at some point, but I've never been that guy. But sometimes I just want it, and earlier I wanted it and I was just in the mode, and when I'm in that mode, man, I can actually get through this whole collection pretty quick, and I stay really focused. And everybody has days where in this hobby where it's hard to think, oh, I gotta do, today's the day, I gotta do all these things. But you just have to. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm a picker, so I do everything every day. Like we try to, because I hate having to pick one day to sit there and do everything.
I mean, I pretty much do maintenance every other day on these guys, which maintenance involves like the whole gamut. Most of my stuff is not in bioactive. I have a handful of things in bioactive enclosures, so those enclosures don't get like full cleans or anything. Little wipe downs, things like that, picks a little poop. But most everything else is on paper towel substrate. So every other day, over 90% of the collection is getting full clean. Everything gets wiped down, glass or paper towels thrown away, new paper towels, water bowls cleaned out, food bowls removed, replaced with clean food bowls with Pangea, crickets given to anything that will eat them, or dubia roaches or whatever I have available. And then, it gets, but for me, if you want to get down to the meat of the question, why do I do this? Why do I love it? It's hard to explain, but there is a thing that happens when you start to create.
Look
your
who
own.
it is.
Hey.
Oh,
Mr. Kyle Riddle, how you doing, brother?
I was hoping we'd see you,
brother. It's been a month
brother.
of Sundays since we heard from you, man. I hope everything's all right.
I saw you found the Facebook page and you liked it the other day. We appreciate that, and I was hoping we might see you in the stream. So thanks for joining us, buddy. I miss you, man. I haven't seen you in a long, long time. But yeah, and you're moving like back and forth across the country. Seems like 3 times a year, buddy.
I know, man.
I gotta bring this one up here. Jennifer asks, "Is it bad that I'm feeding every day?"
Oh yeah, Jennifer.
In my personal experience, I'm gonna say no. It's not bad that you're feeding every day, but also, what are you talking about species wise? Are you talking about geckos? Are you talking about?
I would guess geckos.
Anything else? I mean, obviously, I would guess geckos too, but I don't want to assume. So certain species that eat only live things, you can certainly feed every day, especially in adolescence and through young adulthood. And then the feeding schedule will slow down as they mature, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to slow down to the point of every other day feeding. You can walk your feeding back, in quantity and still feed every day. So, I mean, I personally wouldn't say feeding geckos every day is a bad thing. Offering
No.
food.
Having food available is never a bad thing. They're going to self-regulate to an extent. You know, I find, especially if you're talking about like the New Caledonian species. I see you got a gargoyle on your profile picture.
I don't know. Gargoyles don't do much
Oh, yeah,
self-regulation.
Gargoyles are gluttons, so I try to make sure I feed them every other day, even the babies, because I find that once the hatchlings are out for a couple of weeks, their appetites are just as big as the adults. They will eat way more than a baby crested gecko. So maybe not necessarily every day for a gargoyle, just to regulate that weight gain and that growth to sort of extend it out a little bit. Oh, and she's got a rescue chameleon. Could this be the one that we talked about last week, Jennifer, with the eye issue?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember her talking about that.
Yeah, the partial blind.
Yeah. She says her
Your
gargoyle
gargoyle
is
is
not
not
an
an eater.
eater.
Interesting.
Wow.
I mean,
Number one.
and everybody's got their own personalities, reptiles
Well,
included.
you know
So,
what, Nick? Because my gargoyles eat bugs, yours don't. So
and mine don't. Yeah, none of
I
mine will
guess
eat
it's
bugs.
the thing, you know.
Yeah.
She
So
says yes. How's the chameleon doing? Is it fully blind, partially blind? Have you had any problems feeding it? What's going on with that?
But anyways,
There's a little disconnect in time, so
it
we're gonna
is,
have
yeah.
to
So
give it a
feeding every
second.
day, not necessarily a bad thing, especially when they're small. I find that with my adults, as they get into that adult size, they're going to eat a lot less overall, just depending on the individual. Like my adult, or getting close to adult female gargoyle geckos, clean a bowl. I use the half-ounce cups. I fill them almost to the top for those guys. They clean that bowl.
Damn.
So
That's unfortunate, Jennifer. Sorry to hear that.
sorry about that. Yeah, that's awful. Yeah, that's rough. But you know what? We commend you for putting the effort into trying to take on that responsibility. And obviously those things need a home. And like Bill said last week, they're not always they're not always a lost cause. So having people around that are willing to take on that responsibility is a great thing for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so for me, when it comes to breeding, I think the biggest reward and the thing that just makes me as happy as can be is eggs hatching, man. and it never gets old,
I'm not gonna lie, man. If there was one video that's probably the most searched or the most watched on my YouTube, like my personal YouTube account, it's got to be Brian's egg cutting videos. Something about them.
And that's
it's
something
cool.
that they do in that in that side of the hobby. We obviously don't do it with geckos. Some people will take them out and sometimes rub the egg to like encourage them to come out, because crested geckos hatch really fast. Like they pip and then they fly
out the egg, man.
Yeah, Jennifer, that's good to hear. We're happy to hear the other one's doing great, and we wish you the best
I
of
don't
luck going forward.
remember 100%. You throw it in the comment. Were they veiled? Were they both veiled?
I don't know that she said specifically what the species was.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, we were probably talking about
Panthers or Pardalis, but yeah, that'd be cool to know. But anyway, sorry about that. We're getting sidetracked.
Oh, that's okay.
I love the engagement. I thoroughly do.
Oh yeah, this is what we do this for, guys. So never ever feel like you're ever interrupting us. If we get off track because we're talking to you, that's what we want. We want to talk to you guys.
You want to talk to people.
Yeah,
because I talk to these two every day, and it's the same old stuff.
We talk a lot. We talk a lot. But yeah, anyway, just to finish that up real quick, for me, it's the eggs hatching, man. And there really is nothing like a new thing hatching, whether it's a new species for you, something that you've never hatched before, or it's just a new color morph, something that you're trying to go for. You specifically had this animal and you specifically got this animal with the mindset of putting them together because you think that whatever they're going to produce is going to be something better than what you've produced before, and then it actually is. There's no better feeling in the world. Yeah, no better feeling.
Yeah, you're right about that. We had like I was telling you earlier, we had the last 2 crested geckos hatch for this season.
Yeah, for you guys.
Yesterday, it was actually our anniversary.
And, yes, happy anniversary, guys. I never did say that to you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and she went and looked at the egg. She was like, "We got anniversary baby." So they hatched out yesterday. The last two. It was pretty badass, man. Two beautiful little Cresties.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So they were actually
Jennifer's continuing.
Jacksons.
Okay.
That's
And they were
that's
so they
awesome.
were twins, huh?
Yeah. No.
Not to be not to be that guy or anything, but do you happen to know the locale, male, female, anything like that? I'd be interested to hear.
Man.
Fun fact: not all Jacksons have horns. Certain locales or variations, as some people call them, of Jacksons, the females won't have horns. Only the males will. So yeah, it's fun. All that stuff is fun.
I did not know that.
Now there are quite a few of the horned chameleon species that will have, female and males will both have horny protrusions, but this isn't a chameleon podcast, so here we are. We're gonna transition. We're finally here, so we're gonna transition.
That was last week, buddy.
The keep. It's every week, baby. They're reptiles. Anyway, we're going to transition to the keeping side of it, because there's so much you can do with husbandry and keeping, and not necessarily breeding, just having a variety, like Nick has had, or maybe not such of a variety, but maybe different morphs, or different color patterns or whatnot. So I mean, and it's rewarding to the point where you might even be able to do something like Jennifer here has done, where you're in the position to maybe take on a special needs reptile that somebody maybe just doesn't have the ability to care for, and you could work with that, and that's rewarding in itself. So let's talk about keeping.
I just have to say that's cool, Jennifer, because Viper geckos are awesome. They're definitely one of the species outside of New Caledonia that I want to keep one day. Very cool. Yeah. But yeah, keeping, man. Gabe, you've morphed into this side of it, where you're mostly keeper. Obviously, Carrie handles a lot of your New Caledonian breeding organization of all that.
She does.
She's that's her main thing. But you guys have been really dedicated, to making your adult enclosures as nice as possible. And I think that's one of the things that I want to hit back on, and it's we keep returning to it, is that when you're focused on keeping, and not necessarily in smaller numbers, but maybe in slightly smaller numbers, you guys, you have more time to put into thinking about what you're doing with the environment that you're building around your animal. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and honestly, that's the most fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, and
I like to second that, because obviously keeping a reptile is 100% for your enjoyment. You want to see it. That's what you want to do. You want to see it. Sometimes interact with it, but you want to observe this animal and keep it and see it. And growing my husbandry and the enclosures that they're in has done nothing but just extremely. I don't know. I'm lost for words just thinking about it.
Go ahead, Nick.
Because I'm looking at a whole environment now versus just something sitting in a glass box, and that's a very good point, Nick. Because seeing the live plants and shit like that, it just takes you to a special place.
Where we're heading at is that you can breed and not have all your animals in a tub.
This is the keeping section.
It is, but it is important. But I was going to say the same thing. It's important to say that just because you decide you want to breed some animals, or you even want to breed on a slightly larger scale, doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice that environment. You can certainly still put all that work into putting everything together and making sure that everything's balanced and running in a certain way. But you don't have to, sacrifice that for breeding.
I think there's a misconception that people feel that you can't breed reptiles in complicated or in a more
enriched environment.
Exactly. Like everybody, I don't know, man. I just think that, at least from what I experience, most people are like, oh, well, I'm gonna breed ball pythons, or I'm gonna breed corn snakes. I'm gonna go get a snake rack, or same thing with leopard geckos too, man. I'm gonna get a rack, and it's like you can get a rack, but I mean, I think the process is a lot more enjoyable in a bigger enclosure, just because you get to see a lot more of those natural behaviors. You're not just putting them in there to get it on and that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, the topic, I know we're on keeping, and we've talked about, I think, what is the biggest,
We're kind of going
the biggest reward to just keeping is just being able to recreate to the best of your ability in a continuing evolving, a continually, wow, evolving process of getting that environment better and better. But when we come back to breeding, I think it's important that we touch on this, because this is one thing I wanted to touch on, and I don't have notes tonight, so I didn't have it in front of me to think about, but it just popped into my head.
100% note free.
Yes, this is a note-free podcast, which I like. It's working very well.
I know.
The thing is,
feels good, huh?
yeah, it feels good. But the thing is, with breeding too, there's another really big thing that you have to consider. Breeding is one of the most stressful and potentially dangerous things that you can do with your reptiles, because most reptiles are not social species. I'm sure that there are some species out there, and I guarantee you there are that are that are communal and all that. But most of these things that are commonplace that people are trying to breed and people find out about and get into, putting them together can be very stressful, and in some cases very dangerous if not done properly or not monitored properly. So you have to know going into it that depending on what it is you're breeding, just doing that is potentially going to lead to a problem. Not always, and not 100%, it's not guaranteed, but you could have a problem shortly down the line, whether it's a a conflict between the male and the female when you put them together. We have that with chihuahuas, we have that with lychees. Sometimes they just don't pair, and they tear each other to pieces. Or everything goes smoothly and you have a good lock or whatever, and then you separate, but then something happens to the female, because the process of producing follicles and eggs and all of that stuff is extremely hard on a female reptile, whether it be a snake or a lizard or whatever. Biologically, it's a hard process. It's hard for people to make babies. It's hard for mammals to make babies. Women who have children go through a ton of stress, and sometimes very, very dangerous things can happen. So it's the same thing with your reptiles. So this is an important thing to remember. It's not unethical to breed reptiles. You just need to know that that's a potential thing that can happen to you. And if you don't have the resources to get the treatments that animal needs, if something happens, maybe you shouldn't do it. So yeah, I think it's important to say that because of the topic of the
definitely. Definitely important. But this is probably going to be mainly for both of you. Jennifer's got another good statement here. When it comes to keeping your animals on substrate, maybe they ignore the lay box. My veil chameleon does not have any substrate in her enclosure, and she ignored the lay box. She pulled up everything she could and laid under them. So I've never personally worked with viper geckos, but I can definitely understand it.
Hopefully one day.
I have to ask, the Wise camera, is that just like a Wi-Fi camera or something that you're monitoring so you can tell where the eggs have been laid? Because I'm not familiar with that. I have seen some keepers, especially in the gecko world, they'll keep like night vision cameras on their enclosures so they can get cool shots of what their geckos are doing at night and stuff. But I have to ask that. But aside from that, to answer your question, I've thought about this because I have some bioactive enclosures that I generally just keep my males in, because I wonder, if I keep all of my enclosures bioactive, am I then going to have to dig up an entire bioactive enclosure once a month during the breeding season to find eggs that I don't necessarily know where they've been laid? And eventually I do want to have all my geckos on bioactive, aside from my little hatchling babies, because I raised them up on paper towel for a while. So this is something that we'll have to think about. I don't know whether your gecko will choose to lay in a lay box if it has substrate available.
So I have substrate in my gecko cages.
Yeah.
And I put a lay box. But what I do is I like to use like whatchamacallit, like bigger like bark or bigger like coarser substrate. That way to keep them from digging as much in it. So
I got
I mean, that's the way I've had success. Usually, if you give them like a lay box that has what they actually want, they'll go into lay box. If
Yeah.
your other substrate, is just not.
Yeah, that's why I still keep my girls on paper towels for now. I do want to move into that. I have one female who's ready to breed, but she's never been bred, who's in a bioactive enclosure. And I have seen some holes dug in there from time to time, so I don't know if she's laid possibly an infertile clutch once or twice. But I have a lot of microfauna in there, springtails, isopods that are probably eating infertiles, most likely.
So we've kicked this around a little bit, possibly starting some sort of live stream for various animals. But Dom makes a good point here. Maybe we'll start. Coming soon. Gecko Galaxy Twitch. Eggs hatching.
We can
live
try
stream
that
24
for sure.
hours.
I'll have to do that with
Hey, I could have done that last night, actually.
We can live stream on Instagram. So maybe when the season restarts next year, because I'm all out of eggs. Gabe's now all out of eggs as of tonight.
Yeah.
So we won't start pairing geckos here at Gecko Galaxy until probably sometime in February.
Yeah, I would say so.
And and after that, it'll be another at least 60, 70, 80 days, even more, probably more like 100, because it takes about 30 days for them to lay their first clutch. So yeah, that's something that we can consider. It's hard to catch them.
I'm excited especially this year.
Especially crested geckos, because like I was mentioning earlier, you might have heard, they hatch fast. When they pip, they just come flying out of the egg. They usually don't take their time. So it'd be one of those things we would have to catch it really well. But that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking what he's getting at is more along the lines of
hatch, and then keep an eye on the second egg.
I think it's more along the lines of let's stick a small Wi-Fi camera in the incubator, and let's run a 24-hour stream.
Yeah, I mean we can. It doesn't hurt. Yeah, that's something we could definitely do.
There's 24-hour streams of SpongeBob, bro. I think we can do it with some reptiles.
People are doing it on TikTok now too, with like 3D printing and whatnot. They'll be like, I'm 3D printing a project, and then they just let the camera run on it the whole time the thing's printing, and those things take sometimes days to print. So it's pretty crazy. And people like to watch it, so maybe somebody want to see some reptiles hatching. In my opinion, arguably cooler than plastic coming out of a nozzle making.
I know. I'm excited for this year. Hopefully, this year I'll be producing my first tegus.
Ooh, that would be fun.
And they're cool because once the eggs are ready, you actually have to tickle them out.
Yeah, and then they just come poof. They come flying out.
Yeah, exactly. So, at least from what I've been seeing, like. You take once the first one or two hatches in the wild, like when the first ones hatch, they crawl all over the eggs, and that's what makes all the other eggs hatch. So they hatch at the same time. So what people do is they actually, tickle the eggs, and these little baby tegus just shoot out.
Yep.
So I am looking forward to it. Hopefully this year it'll happen.
That's gonna be cool. Get us some footage of that when it happens, so we can put it on the channel for sure. But yeah, I don't know. We, trying to put some limitations on ourselves for these Just Us episodes, where we put a 45-minute timer on ourselves so that we can try to stay closer to an hour, because with the hour we always go over. So I feel like it's probably a good time to start wrapping it up. Dom has one last good point, maybe just a time lapse. That's another obvious option too, Dom. We can certainly try to cater to all of these things in the upcoming season. It's something I've wanted to do, not necessarily a live stream, but maybe a time lapse or just a video of a gecko hatching. But it's tough to catch them when they do, man.
Now, me and Dom, we talk about this all the time about putting a live stream for the cams up, because my panther is insanely active.
It'd be cool. So like when you're at work,
he's insanely active.
Just have him.
But every time I walk in the room, he's in a different spot, a different color, different spot, doing something.
Yeah,
just completely random. Like he's just walking around having a good time. So maybe.
Yeah, it would be cool to have him on like a live stream, like while you're at work. You could just pull it up from time to time and be like, "Oh yeah, look what he's doing now." Just the stuff that you don't see because you're not there, and that's good that you're not there, because it's less stressful for him to have a human in the room watching him, and he won't notice a camera. So very cool.
Of course. Jennifer says she just sent a few photos. I haven't. I don't know.
Did you send
Are
them
they
to?
supposed to see in the chat?
I don't know
Maybe.
that's a possibility. Did you send them to our email or did you message us on Instagram or something, Jennifer, or Facebook maybe?
Oh no, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess when it comes to
Instagram.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll check
Well,
them out.
I just threw my email down there in the chat for you, so
Yep.
definitely feel free to send them to that as well. Yeah, no, this has been great, guys. Thank you for so much engagement, Dom, Jennifer, both of you guys, amazing.
Yeah, and thanks, Kyle, bud, for tuning in. I was wondering if we were going to see you, so if you're still here, thanks for coming in and watching us, man. Definitely miss you, and I hope you're doing well back in Colorado.
Oh.
Yep.
Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
Colorado to Florida, and then back to Colorado. So. Yep.
Definitely.
Man.
Yeah. So.
So one thing that we need to touch on before we wrap up is we have decided as a group that because next Friday is Christmas Eve, that we are taking the week off from the podcast. So we won't actually, for the very first time, and hopefully for the last time for a while, unless something else happens, we won't
at least
have a live.
51 weeks or so after the next one.
Right. Yeah. Depending on when the next holiday falls exactly, we might still do a live stream next Christmas. But this time around, with travel and everything, me and my family are traveling to Virginia, where these guys live, to see everybody for Christmas and stuff. So we are just not going to do a Christmas Eve podcast. But we'll be back the week after that, maybe with a guest if we can get it lined up, and if not, with
maybe we could
topic
try
for you guys.
I don't know. We'll figure something.
Go ahead.
Yeah. However, be on the lookout for a possible short update.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We might do an
update.
A quick little update video is not out of the question. So, awesome. And I actually really looking forward to those pictures Jennifer sent over. So
yeah, we're gonna take a look at them as soon as we get off of here, and we
keep an eye out, guys, because we might we might have some of those on a future thumbnail.
Yeah, if she gives us permission and we get somebody to talk about those geckos, then yeah, we can definitely share them that way with you guys. She sent a video too from one of the Wise cameras. Very nice. Interesting to see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. No, I think I'm definitely gonna check out the Wise because I would love to see what my guys are doing throughout the day.
I follow this guy that has the Wise camera. I think it's a Wise camera, and he has tokay geckos. And it's badass to see the tokay geckos come out to bask before the lights even come on. Like they know.
Is this Reptiliatus?
Yes.
I love that guy, man.
Yeah, dude, badass.
I love Reptiliatus. He's one of our Canadian brethren up there. He's got an awesome collection of some really cool animals, and he's all about like.
It's made me want tokays.
Dude, every time somebody says tokay gecko, I get excited.
Tokays.
Tokays are very cool.
I love tokay.
I'm under restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to bring a tokay into the house right now. My wife would
I'm under restrictions.
decapitate me.
One day.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so
nice.
So with the update in there, I think it's a good time to wrap up. So go for it.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, in 2 weeks we'll see you guys.
All right.
Awesome. Make sure you guys check out the USARK. It would mean the entire world to us if you could please like and subscribe. That would be amazing. We need all the support we can get. Speaking of support, Jennifer, Dom, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight and being so interactive. It's great. We love it. Look forward to it. Can't wait to check out those photos you sent over, Jennifer. That's going to be awesome. So thank you again for that. And she says we can use them. So, that'd be nice. We put some stuff together, hopefully do a good episode.
Yeah, awesome.
For you guys. Awesome. So here it is. Thank you again. Friday, number 8 in a row.
Ooh.
We're hanging out. You're hanging out. Dom and Jennifer, they're definitely hanging out. And this is Reptile Hangouts. So thank you guys so much. We cannot wait to see you guys after Christmas. And we wish you guys a very happy holiday.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome, wonderful, joy, peace to all. Have a great holiday. Thank you
All
guys so
right.
much.
Alrighty. Good night, everybody.
Night.